I was a poor kid when I was growing up, right? So I know what it was like to not have money. And the idea of money was such a foreign thing to me. It was like a language I wanted to learn. And then once you learn the language of money, you don't have to be able to speak it, but you know it.
Yeah.
And once you know someone who knows money, you know.
This is your boy Matt 101, and this is the Real Success Podcast. I got my co-host Chris the Shotgun Pasco, and we are joined. I'm very excited about this. We are joined by Joe O'Brien, a financial advisor out of Salem, New Hampshire, and I'm very excited to pick his brain. I think you all will be too, and we're gonna dive right into it. Are you ready?
What's going on, guys? How are you?
This is actually my first time meeting him. Now, do you operate a financial advisement company, or do you just own one?
That's a great question. Yeah. So I end up actually working for Edward Jones, and I run a branch of Edward Jones. And I've been running that for about 4 years now.
Oh, so is it basically like a franchise deal?
Kind of, yeah. They actually will fund your startup. So you put in all the hard work up front, and not everyone gets to work for Edward Jones. It's a very selective process. So once they actually do hire you, ideally, they're going to make the investment in you first. And that was one of the big pushes.
That is
Yeah.
really awesome.
So you actually had to apply basically and get approval from Edward Jones in order to get your startup
An opportunity.
funded.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So-
you must have had to have a license in place before that, correct?
Yeah, so when you start off with Jones, during the interview process, it was really cool because you get to make a business plan and that sort of thing, and you get to pitch it, right?
Nice.
So when that was done, they're like, oh, congrats, you get the job, whatever. And then you get to get licensed. So, you're studying for 9 months.
Yeah.
I don't think I left my house for 9 months, kind of like a quarantine, and just started studying.
And then do you have to pass a specific exam just like we do in real estate?
Yep.
That's kind of the see-all, tell-all at the end, right?
Yeah, and so once you get that passed, either you're going to make it or not, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you go out to St. Lou, and I worked out there for about 6 months.
Nice.
So I worked in their corporate headquarters and then came out to the field in
So
2016.
let's talk about that a little bit. Joe and I actually met at a B&I group.
Yeah.
I don't know, probably 3-ish years ago at this
that
point.
sounds right.
We kind of hit it off because we're both young, hungry, motivated, working hard, doing our own thing, on the work grind. This is far from my realm of expertise, anything to do with financial anything. I'm just good at making money and spending it. So, but Joe was kind of telling me the process to get his own Edward Jones and how to start up. And at 23 or 24, you were already crushing it, running your own branch. But from memory, you had told me that the testing is very, very difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And for you to have accomplished that at a young age seemed pretty impressive to me at the time.
Yeah, so the testing, it's one of the more challenging, the Series 7. I'm sure you guys have all heard of that notorious.
Series 7.
Yeah.
I hear that term a lot.
But what's actually really challenging is not even the testing. It's once you hit the field. The ability to go from having someone who has a basic knowledge about something and convincing a clientele to see the value in that service and come work with you is actually quite challenging, especially when we were 23 years old.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was going door to door at that time in the middle of the summer.
They're
in
like, what do
July.
you know about money?
Exactly.
You're 23.
It was terribly funny because you'd walk up to a door and this guy would just be like, oh, well, you're younger than my son. And my son's living in my basement, so there's no way I'm going to give you my money. And I'm like, well, I understand that perspective, but,
There's a reason why I'm here
there's
on
a
your
reason,
front doorstep and your
exactly.
son's in your basement.
Exactly. and I think, and not to dig on that,
No,
you know
no,
what
no,
I mean?
no.
Because we've all been there.
Yeah,
we all
absolutely.
come from those basements, but
Absolutely.
it was just an interesting experience to early on see some of that hesitation in someone who's young and hustling and working hard, that if you just push through that rejection long enough, you end up like me, Chris, and yourself. And
With
that
referrals
journey.
and a built business.
Exactly.
And a foundation.
Yep. So that journey from the bottom to the top, and that's why I liked Chris a lot when I first met him, because I was like, hey, look at Chris. He's like, you're going to hustle hard. And I know it. You're probably 23, and we were in the B&I in Salem together, and I was running that as a president for a while. And I remember when I met you, and I was like, dude, you don't need this. You don't even need the B&I, dude. I'm telling you right now, you're going to be successful no matter what. And I think early on, that ability to identify people that you wanted to partner with and emulate, Chris is definitely one of those guys, and I think we hit it off pretty early. And I was like, dude, you're going to kill it.
Well, I think the cool thing about when we first met was And I think the same kind of goes for us three and Alex in the back too. We're all relatively young for where we are at, and there's not a lot of people our age that are working like we're working and hustling like where we are, or have been hustling like we have been for the last few years. You know, I'm sure my friends, a lot of people, or kids our age now, are starting to be at that point where they start to, you know, mid to late 20s, hitting their early 30s. You're starting to build up your business or your career or whatever you're doing. But we've all been kind of doing that for a number of years.
Well, in my opinion, it takes a certain amount of initiative in order to enter our realm at all, whether it's financial advisement or real estate or anything commission based where your income is not guaranteed. It takes a certain person and a certain personality to be able to just leap over the edge. I mean, when I left Pike Industries, I had a lot of people look at me saying, why the hell are you ruining such a good thing? You went to college for this. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And I was like, no, you know, no one was changing my mind. And I recognize other people who have that. Like, I almost immediately see it. Like, when I met Alex Bellman for the first time that night at the Thirsty Moose, I thought, this guy knows what's up.
Yeah.
And I recognized that with Chris as soon as I met him, and you know, I'm just meeting you now, but I can see it. So I think that's also like a business attribute of us.
It's a unique character trait
It's a knack,
for all of us.
really.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, like you said, to go all commission, to go on out on a limb and really eat what you kill, that kind of mindset does take a different type of, and I'm just going to use the word millennial here right now because of us.
We are,
I'd say we do stick out from the norm of our generation.
Absolutely.
And
100%.
And I don't know if it's maybe, I don't know your background, Matt, or Chris, a little bit. I know a little bit about your story, but you have to be motivated.
Yeah.
And I think there has to be something behind you that's just driving you so much harder in that direction where you're going to take those risks that there aren't.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole thing right there, right? Risk versus reward.
Oh, exactly.
It was a huge risk for me to quit everything that I knew and start trying to sell real estate from nowhere. I mean, I maybe had like $5,000 in savings, and I'm like, do you know how quickly $5,000 goes away when you don't have any income? Like,
and you have to start immediately surrounding yourself with people who are similar, because if you don't, you start to drown quickly.
Right.
I remember starting at my small
success.
Right. That too. But I remember starting at a small mom and pop brokerage, and until I migrated over to the big franchise, I could tell I was already growing out of it.
Right.
Like, the resources weren't there. Things just weren't there. I mean, it was time to move into a different direction and go to a bigger franchise. And look how much you've
grown since then.
And since then it's
same with me too. Granted, I didn't start at a small mom and pop, but
you got to not be afraid to do that. Right. There would have been a lot of people who would have stayed at that small mom and pop because that's what's comfortable.
So let me interject here because I heard something that was really interesting. You said that you were starting to run into issues where you had capacity issues or the resources weren't working for you.
Yeah.
What I've noticed is that it takes a growth mindset. So your mind is so far ahead than the entire company you were working for at the time. Your ambitions were so much bigger than what you were already at. It's almost kind of like putting a square peg in a round hole. You know what I mean? We're not meant to be fitting that restricted growth. We want to go and get it. And I think that's just something that, you know, whether it's sales, commission, hustling, business owner, all of that. And I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And just finding people that are supportive, because there's going to be so many naysayers. Like, immediately when you hop into business in any way, shape, or form, or just anything that's not stable salary or hourly wage, people are going to look down on it. And I've noticed as I got older that it seems like the adults that talk down on business or investing or anything are usually people who, A, don't do it themselves, B, just have a negative connotation about it, or C, haters gonna hate type mentality. I hate to say it like that, but it's true. It is true. It seemed like whenever I was talking to someone about my goals or aspirations, they were almost like, well, you know, that's hard. You know, that's really hard, Matt. You know what? There's an 87% failure rate in real estate. And then I take it as an insult because I'm like, well, you don't know me. You know, that's not very fair of you to say. Right. Just because, you know, it's hard that I can't
that's
do
just
it.
Fuel to the fire right there, though.
Right.
And I just ran into it again and again until the past, like, 4 years, my life has been completely different.
Yeah, but you know what, though? The more people that tell me like that, the more I'm like, you know what? Look what I'm going to do. Watch me. And then look at me however many years later, and I'm just lighting it up. You know what I mean? So it's like...
Well, I want to turn it back to you.
Yeah, what's up?
So how long or when did you figure out that financial advisement was going to be your route, and how did you get there? Was it an
Yeah.
idea that popped in your head? Was it something
No.
that you always knew? Were you in college?
He
Yep.
watched Wolf of Wall Street and he's like, that's it. There's my calling.
So no, I'll start off with the Wolf of Wall Street, right? So nothing. It's not like that anymore. Yeah, right. So we're definitely
I gotta
not-
admit, I wish I was 27 in 1984.
Yes,
Oh my
yes,
God, right?
yes.
Because that would be sick.
Yeah, no, we're definitely not drinking martinis by noon.
Yeah.
That's not happening. You know,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of regulatory things now because of things that happened in
Oh,
that
I'm
movie.
sure.
We just
Right.
talked about that too on the
Yeah.
golf course.
It's like you just don't live in that world anymore. It's
No.
changed so much
Yeah.
since
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
So, you know, when I first started getting into the business, it was really easy because I didn't really have that many opportunities when I came out of college. So I graduated early with a poli-sci degree in Mandarin Studies as my minor.
Oh, nice.
And I wanted to go down to D.C. and work in politics and international relations, but you can't make money down in D.C. as a new kid coming out of college. Like, they're going to charge you $2,800 for a studio apartment. You literally just can't afford it.
Right.
So I was just kind of sitting around one day and, 40, 50 job applications later, my stepdad was like, oh, I want to go see my advisor. Like, you want to come or whatever? And so I went. And next thing you know, I was like, wait, this guy does this for work all day long? Like, this is sick. And one of the things I learned really on, I was a poor kid when I was growing up, right? So I know what it was like to not have money. And the idea of money was such a foreign thing to me. It was like a language I wanted to learn. And then once you learn the language of money, you don't have to be able to speak it, but you know it.
Yeah.
And once you know someone who knows money, you know.
Yeah.
Because people will view money more personally than they have their health their
Yeah.
entire lives because there's such an emotional attachment to it.
Right, and it's
That's
like
a deep statement. I never thought about
Yeah.
that.
and it's taboo. Like growing up talking about it, you're not supposed to talk about
Right.
it. And I almost want to
Abolish
put
that.
that to the
Yeah.
wayside because
Yeah.
the fact that we don't teach in our high schools, simple paying bills and more
Taxes.
life skills that are involved.
Investments.
The fact of the matter is, money runs a main part of the world, and in order to function, especially in our country, you need to have it or some
Right.
sort of form of it. And that's the simple fact of the matter. I would love to go back to hunter and gatherer stages, but the fact is that's not what it is.
Right.
You need to earn, you need to provide a roof for your family, and you need to progress and move forward unless you want to be living off someone else or living off the system as a whole. So I want to talk about money more and more. And when I was 23 years old, I started to get more into that after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like I
Oh,
was
yeah.
thinking in
That
my
was
That's a
it, dude.
great
I,
book.
I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
favorite
yeah.
book,
I was
man.
just like why don't more people talk about this? It seems like as soon as you mention investments, real estate, 401ks, people's brains shut down and they're like, you know what, that's rocket scientist stuff and that's not for me, and
Yeah.
it's all bull. And it's just like, why do you think like that? Why not delve into it, research it, learn about it?
I think it's the fear of unknown. People don't feel confident or believe in things they don't understand,
Yeah.
right? So if you show them an investment and they don't understand it, they're going to call it.
Yeah, how can-
exactly.
how can they-
exactly.
Go after something that they don't understand. Like
Right.
how can I throw money at something I don't get how it works, or I don't get how the return is, or
Exactly.
the process, or
And so
how do you commit to something?
what
like
ended
that?
up happening over time is what I learned was the majority of my process really more so revolved around education more than selling, because once the client understood what was important to
Yeah.
them, but also, hey, look at this is a financial vehicle that you can learn about, understand, they feel empowered. And there's nothing more empowering than really understanding how to put your money to work
Right.
and
Yeah.
get that money working for you versus
Absolutely.
working for it.
I bought my first investment property at 23, and at 23 I was like, okay, I used my VA loan to buy a duplex. I basically spent no money out of pocket to get into a house, and I'm like, I just essentially spent money or took out money, but it's gonna make me money back. And it made me money for 3.5 years, and then I sold it and I made more money on
You
the
actually
appreciation.
purchased an asset.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Instead.
that was really cool, but at like 23, 24, that's when I realized that as much as I love spending money, because if there's one thing I'm good at, spending money on that I don't need and shouldn't be spending money on, Alex Bellman. If you guys need a new watch, you hit up Alex Bellman over at Bellman Jewelers.
Where'd you get that one? That was beautiful.
It was actually a Father's Day gift from my 1-month-old and my wife. So
nice.
yeah.
Nice.
But I mean, it still came from my bank account. I realized that I, as much as I love to spend money, I want to spend money on stuff that's going to make me money, so that when I'm 40, 50, 60 years old, I have passive income just rolling in. You don't have to work. You don't have to live paycheck to paycheck. Maybe you still want a retirement account and a savings account for retirement. But if you have a 10 unit multifamily property and it can make you $5,000 a month, who can't live
There's
off
a big difference between
who can't live
good
off
debt,
of $5,000 a month?
good debt and bad debt.
Exactly.
And that's a big picture too. I mean,
Yeah.
not everybody at 23 can see big picture like that.
True.
The ability to take on loans and responsibility. A lot of people are coming out with student debt too. And they
I
don't
know.
have those types of
I know.
opportunities.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
much debt.
But
so much debt. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have so much debt.
It's crippling.
I have a small home's worth of debt.
it's true though. I'll tell you one thing though. When it comes down to at least people in this room, that from what I've learned here, Matt, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. We learned early and often the sense of delayed gratification. The work and time that we had to put in for the money, so we had a much better appreciation for what we were doing.
Yeah. No, I think
that's true.
I think you hit the nail on the head, because Matt's been doing this a couple years longer than I have, but he didn't really start until like his first or second year, anyways, to really try to hustle and build that business.
I didn't surround myself with
the right
supportive people
and that,
right away.
And
I was
that
a
was
lone
the difference
wolf.
maker. That was the
100%.
difference maker for sure.
Yeah.
So, but and neither did I really. I mean, I did. I was at a Remax before, but it was a lot of what I refer to as seasoned agents. They got mad when I called them old. But as much as I loved working with them, it was all 50 and 60-year-old realtors who've been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years. But then I switched to a different Remax with an amazing broker with amazing
guns.
support. And I met people like Matt and his brother Tony, who's been on the show. And there's a lot of realtors in there that are in their, a couple of us in our 20s and a good majority in their early to late 30s, which is, to me, really cool to work with people with the similar mindsets versus... It's not like I can go hang out with 50 and 60-year-olds and be like, yeah, let's talk about, slinging house.
Yeah, and when a couple years ago, the average age of a realtor was 56.
What is it now?
I think it's lower now.
Alex?
Yeah, maybe you should look that up, Alex.
What's the average age of a real estate agent in the U.S.?
Do you mind looking up financial advisors as well?
Yeah,
because
that'll be a fun fact.
Because the truth is, both in our industries,
well,
it's severely aged.
And it goes for loan officers too, and title and everything in this industry. There's going to be a change where, over the next few years, that number's going to start to come down, I think, pretty drastically.
Yeah, but in our industries, people view age and experience as hand in hand, when that's 100% not true.
Inaccurate. Yes.
I've done over 100 transactions, and literally there are agents who have been in the business for 10 years that have done 50.
Right.
So
it's like I had an.
By
go
the
ahead.
way, it's so. I just wanted to, speaking on like age doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like I just had a client come in and tell me that they had someone who's in their 40s or 50s helping these people sell a house, and they did such a terrible job that they actually took the card from the other realtor and gave that to their family who was selling a house down the road because they had such an awful experience. And this woman had been in the business for years.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing too, is you end up with a realtor that maybe they're just not hungry for, or they don't care as much anymore because they're just tired and burnt out, and that's totally understandable and respectable. Like, hey, you've been doing it for 30, 40 years, you're tired, you don't want to work as hard. That's
People
fine.
got to realize that we're in an industry that's constantly evolving and changing, and we have
and
to
that's
keep
where
up
I want to
date
go
with
with this. Is I had a listing in. And the realtor, was getting all fired up with it. He was like, well, I've been selling real estate since 1993. And I'm like, that's the year I was born.
Yeah, right.
But then, I have to, just because it's me, I have to go pull this guy's numbers. And I'm like, okay, you've sold 10 houses in the last 3 years. I've sold 90. Who has more experience in this market?
Right.
Are you really going to sit here and argue that you're a more knowledgeable realtor because you've been doing it for 30 years? Or are you going to say that I really have more experience because I've done it 80 more times than you have in the last 3 years? Like,
Right. You're front-loading your experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's one of
Yeah.
my biggest pet peeves when realtors are like, I've been in real estate for 40 years. And I'm like, well, how many houses have you sold in the last 10?
It's because they're still doing it the same way.
Jewelers do the same thing. Jewelers
It's so, that's probably my biggest pet
I've been
peeve.
doing this for 30 years. Well, you're still doing it wrong.
Right.
It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it if you're doing it wrong.
Right.
All right, I've got your stats.
Okay.
We're
Let's hear
going to
'em.
go by highest percentage because what they're doing is they've had it broken down by the highest percentage, which is obviously the older base.
Right.
So the highest percent of financial advisors is 51 to 55 years old.
At 38%.
At
All right.
38. And now realtors, it is 60 years old.
Okay.
And what's
yeah.
the percentage? The same?
57 for women and 43 for men.
Oh my
All right.
God.
Yeah.
So you guys, the way I'm hearing this is like you guys are on the bottom floor of the most overweighted industry
Oh,
I've
100%.
ever heard of.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it this way. Would you ever work with a real estate or a financial advisor for a long-term relationship? I mean, your guy. You know what I mean? Like when you
Right.
say like, oh, I got a guy, whether it's real estate or
Yep,
financial
yep,
advising.
yep.
And let's say they're over 50 years old. You know, if you're
If you're a
someone who's
30-year-old
you got
investor,
it. You got it. If
you
you're a
wanna-
30-year
you wanna-
investor or a property buyer or something like that,
Well,
your
we've-
advisor
yeah.
or investment real estate investor is going to be retiring soon.
Right. I'm 27. I got at least 30 more years
Right.
of investing. I want to be able to grow with somebody, you know?
Yep.
So I
Yeah,
think that's
it's your
a cool
it's your
thing to
wealth
do.
building team.
Right.
You got to think of it
You
like
have to
that. Your
surround yourself with the right
CPA,
people.
your financial advisor. You gotta have your wealth building team there and
Totally.
keep rocking and rolling. But anyways, Joe, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, and I'm gonna try to keep it as general as possible.
Sure.
I know that you can't give direct advice,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to find out from you, being in the financial realm, if you literally could make one move in your 20s, just in general, that could better your future. What do you think that would be?
That's a fantastic question. If I had somebody who wanted to get started, who was in our age group, I'd say go and talk to a financial advisor and ask him this question and say, I want to change my relationship with money. How can I learn more about my financial situation and improve it? Asking that basic question is going to start you off in the right direction. It doesn't matter who you talk to. He's going to set you off in the
It's
right
the right
path.
first step.
It's the right first step is
Yeah.
changing your own relationship with money because it all starts there. If you
Yeah.
view your money in a way that is never going to hold risk, you're never going to be an investor. So you have to be able to be flexible with
Yeah.
what might be 20 years of a learning experience of how money works. Like you said, oh, I never going to talk about it because my mom always said it was taboo. You can have that ingrained for 25 years. You're going to walk into that office and you're going to say, Mr. Advisor, break this for me. Because you're going to want to be able to share as much information about your financial situation. And so what I would say is when you sit down with someone for the very first time, tell them everything. Give them the whole picture because you're never going to get proper advice without giving the full
All the
picture.
information.
You
Yeah.
got it.
I think the same kind of goes with certain clients of ours too. I find like some of my clients here and there don't really understand the concept that I represent their best interests and that they need to be honest and upfront with me so that I can help them to the fullest extent and represent their best interests and negotiate on their behalf. But it's like sometimes we get clients and they want to play hardball with me.
Right.
And I'm like, what's your bottom line on this house? What's the most you're willing to pay? Don't try to negotiate with me because I need to know how to negotiate for you. And if you give me a wrong number, we're not going to make any progress, with negotiations. But a lot of times people try to act like they're negotiating with me. It's like, no, we are negotiating together against
You're on the
them.
same team.
Right. And some people don't really quite understand that. You have to kind
You're
of be
on
like,
the
you need
same
to
side of the
you
table.
need to trust me.
Right.
You need to trust me.
Right. And I have a pretty good analogy for that too. And I've seen this, at least in the younger sales world, this happens a lot with those older clients or people who might be more hesitant, whether it's cost and they're negotiating with you,
Yeah.
or whether it's just a hesitance and trust. And that is, whether it's buying a home or buying an investment, you never want to be the cheapest and you never want to be the tackiest, whether it's negotiating, right? You never want to sell yourself out because let's put it this way. If you were buying a home or buying an investment and this was equally as important to you as your health, I wouldn't want to be the cheapest cardiologist.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to be the cardiologist who's going to undercut the other doctor because that guy's got something shady going on.
Right.
And so you have to be able to set the mindset that, yeah, you're on the right side of the table as them. You have the value there too.
Yeah.
And they're going to see that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've learned, or starting to, it's continuing to evolve, is to never to cut my own bag, to
You're worth
realize
it.
my own value and,
Well, you gotta know
and
your
charge
worth, right?
charge the commission that I should be charging for listings and so forth.
And for buyers too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because you know what? Let's face it, buyers are can be a lot more work than listings, especially in this market. I mean,
Well, it can
anybody
be
can
a
throw
lot more running and gunning and
Well, and that's it. But
grunt work.
anybody can throw a house on the MLS right now, and really, you could put one picture. It's still probably going to sell. It doesn't make you a good agent or mean that you could sell. It just means that anybody can sell a house right now. Because all you can do is put it on the MLS. But with buyers, I mean, I have a client right now who it's like we've been through probably 35 houses so far and haven't found anything. And then she just does a complete 180 on her search, and now she wants to go another direction, which is fine. I don't care. Like, I like her. I'll work with you as long as you want, as long as it takes. Like, that's my job. But am I going to settle for 2% at the end of the day when I know that I spent 6, 8,
Right.
12 months, hours of phone calls and market analyses and gas and miles driving around? You need to know your worth, and you can't just sell yourself short, or you're never going to be able to build that, you're never going to be able to grow.
I mean, what makes a good agent? I'm sure you've worked with agents that are bad and agents that are good, so I'm sure
Communication is the biggest
Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
Just pick up the phone.
And it's not, yeah, that's a huge part of it, but it's actually
Emotions.
realizing how to navigate the market. I've seen so many realtors trying to help buyers get into a property right now, and they are just hitting the wall on
Every
everything
offer.
for 6 months, and the poor buyer does not realize it's because of the realtor.
Right.
The realtor didn't
wow.
give him the information on how to win
Win
a
a bid.
contract in a competitive
yeah.
situation.
When you have 20
I literally
offers.
had a client. I just got a client because they ended up firing their current buyer's agent because they were it was a family member and they're working with me on the sell side, and they ended up coming around. And it's because I gave them so much information. They're like, wow, I've never had a realtor explain this to me. I've never had a realtor explain how important inspections are, timeframes are, financing type, earnest money deposit. They're like, we never even thought of it that way. We didn't think of asking for closing costs back to affect us in any way whatsoever. And when I go through and nail down exactly what a seller's looking for in a competitive situation, my buyers are always like, Matt, thank you so much. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have got this house.
Yep.
And so that's the difference on the buy side.
And
On the
that's
sell
value.
side, the artist in me, it feels like it's an art form. It
I
really
agree.
does. Like, you can see the difference between a listing agent who cares versus one that doesn't in a heartbeat by looking at it.
At the listing.
Like, literally, you can see the listing description. If you see 2 sentences in photos with an iPhone, you know this guy doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And then you see professional photography, drone shots, and a listing description this size that literally doesn't just describe the property, it describes a story. It makes the buyer feel a certain way when they're reading it.
Right.
That's the difference between a damn good listing agent and one that's not.
And that story is going to incorporate a persona where they can put themselves in that story and see themselves living in that house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It helps the buyers envision. The other thing too, not just to go off of photos or videography from professionals or good listing descriptions, but sometimes I go on the MLS and you see no description and 10 pictures, and then you just go through the rest of the listing and there's nothing there. There's no school systems. There's no
Right.
booking page for the deed. There's
Or
nothing.
what about showing instructions, call list agent, and
Yep.
then they don't
And then they don't answer their phone.
And then they don't have
or
a
they
showing
say,
service.
Hold on.
Right.
How about call listing brokerage that's only open Monday through Friday from
You're
9
not
to
gonna
5.
call- you're not
How
gonna buy
can
the
I
house.
schedule showings on a
Right.
weekend?
Right.
I can't.
And that's
And if they would
And
just
there's
check
a lot of that out there, Joe.
if they would
There's
just
There
check
is.
one box, you could schedule a showing right through a website that does all your scheduling. But instead,
Yeah.
they just literally don't check that box, and it's like, oh my god.
And this is an interesting time, right? So I think this is the death of the 9 to 5.
and offices
Yeah.
and with all
I think
this
among
social
everyone.
distancing
It's
and working
awful.
from home.
I mean, it's tough when you have such a set and way economy that's been operating for, over 100 years in a certain way. It was grind, it was capitalism, it was make the dollar by the hour kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And 9 to 5 was the work day, right? And I think, there's still a lot of people out there who think if they just show up 9 to 5 and get paid, they worked. Well, that's not work, right? And we've learned what real work is. And so when you start getting compensated for what you're doing, you start realizing the 9 to 5 is not a way to live.
Right.
You need to work in a way that actually complements your lifestyle more so and create a lifestyle that's always working. And we were talking about this the other day on the golf course, and that is, when we first...
On the golf course.
Yeah, of course.
Just saying.
Well, it's always work. You're always working on the golf course.
Well,
It's true.
I mean, you are.
My wife doesn't believe me. But
Well, also just for us, networking and relationships is
Right.
work in of itself. It's just
Yeah.
a branch of it.
And so, I mean, when I first started, we would go out and we would door knock on houses, and maybe I'd go out for 4 or 5 hours. And that might be my work for the day, right? Well, now today I might go do a networking event, go play golf with Chris, bring on a mortgage officer
I
or
took a
something.
nap today.
Yeah, exactly. But
for
when
like
you...
2 hours.
Oh, geez, don't tell me that.
Yeah, but then
Ignored
you
all
also
my
have
phone
those
calls.
days where it's 16 hours.
Well,
Right,
back
it's
to
5
back,
a.m.
so-
till midnight.
But the thing is, that could be on a Saturday.
Right.
It's
never
just,
know.
It's just one of those.
You want to have the 4-hour workday. I'm sure you guys have heard about that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you go in, you work for 4 hours, you're working every single minute you're
For
in
4
there.
hours, right.
So by 4 hours, you're done.
Right.
And now you have so much more time to go be more efficient on all those other things you want to be doing.
Yeah.
I think the 9 to 5 is done, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well,
I think
especially
it's-
amongst the coronavirus and
it's gonna be
COVID-19.
crazy.
Because more and more companies are sending people home. And companies like Amazon and Twitter and Facebook and all of those heavy tech hitters seem to be sending their employees home. And I
Right.
don't think they're going to be bringing
They're
It's a
them
not
back.
going to come
trendsetter.
back.
It's a
I
trendsetter.
don't know if they're
Right
gonna be
now,
bringing
these
them back.
these quote big hitter companies are realizing, wait a second, we can make just as much money with half the
And they
people
can
in
be
the
working
office
from
and half
home.
the people
Right.
at home.
And we don't have to lease all this
and we
extra
laid
space.
the other half of employees off altogether, and we can still accomplish the same thing.
And
Are you kidding me? Yeah, we're
it's-
going to keep it that way.
It's because over time, corporations and even government entities too they've filled the process and just hammered on the process of things to the point where, they might say, oh, how many sales calls did you make? Oh, I made 150 sales calls. Did you close any deals? Well, no. All right, well, you didn't do anything, right? So, I mean, the whole concept there being, the effort and the work that you're putting in comes as a direct result of the actions that you're doing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it doesn't
Makes
matter how
sense.
many hours you're working. If you go in there and you work 4 hours, but you're just kind of
Your
sloughing
product-
it off, you're
right.
not really getting anything done.
There's
Right.
not going to be
It's
any more
productivity.
jobs like. Have you ever watched Workaholics?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
okay, so-
Come on.
No, I've never seen it. Yes,
Dude, you
no.
have to
So
watch
okay, so
it.
the guys in Workaholics are just total rascals, and they party all the time, and they report to this corporate office every day, 9 to 5.
Oh,
and
God.
literally, they're not doing anything
They don't
on their
do
computers half the
anything.
time. And to be honest, there's a lot of companies that actually do that. They hold dead weight,
Yeah.
where
They don't even know it.
They don't
where
know
they
it.
don't know it, but they're like they're tasked with plugging in data or like doing this specific
Redundancy.
thing. Yeah, very repetitive stuff where people are not motivated to move forward. I mean, what's the
Fun.
motivation
Right.
there, you know? And I think there's a lot of companies who were doing that, and I think it's going to be more and more just getting away from that.
I think if I had to pick a phrase here, it'd be people got comfortable.
Yeah.
People got really comfortable with the way things are being done, and now we have to start getting really comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the transition forward. Those people who are taking those risks, doing it differently, being innovative and efficient, are going to be the ones that are successful coming out of this.
I gotta be honest. Being in a salaried position to me is way more risky than doing
Oh,
what
yeah,
I'm
the
doing.
risk of no
'Cause
growth.
I literally have the power to make my own money.
Right.
It's a direct result of the time that I put
Put
in.
in.
While these people who are salaried, not to knock it, like I can understand wanting the stability, wanting the 401k match, wanting all that great stuff. That's awesome. But you're directly reliant on that company going forward. And it's like when I watched that movie Company Men, and I was like, man, that's a scary situation to be in after 25
Right.
years, and you have a family and you have a mortgage and you have 3 kids.
You wake up miserable at
And-
45 and you're like, what did I just do with my life?
Right. And the thing is there are certain jobs where you develop such great skills that, yeah, you'll have other companies that can immediately hire you right away, so you're not as reliant on that company. But, I mean, that's where I really turned the corner trying to do the whole entrepreneur wealth building thing. I was working for a company and realized how reliant I was on them. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, sparked something in me, and then all of a sudden I was gone. And
I think you had that spark all along. I think we all did.
I think
Yeah.
Rich Dad Poor Dad definitely helps, like
Yeah,
kind of
it
give you
just-
that different perspective. We've talked about the book before on the show because
Sure.
almost any person that we talk to who's like
Well, it's
us,
such a
young,
simple
has
read.
heard and
It
or
is
read
such
it.
it is,
simple
but
read.
it
It's
kind of
clean
gets
cut.
rid of that whole we don't talk about money, like
Yeah.
the awkward mindset of money, and just gives you a totally different, like kind of like a laxed but very different perspective on money
Yeah.
and how to manage it.
So when did you guys know you wanted to work for yourself?
Geez, when I saw that the banks, when you put money in a savings account, they give you no interest whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I was like, how do I make more money and make it work for me in some way, shape, or form? Because I know exactly where I'm capped at. Like, I knew at the company that I was at, I was living paycheck to paycheck because I was young, I was partying a lot, and that's just how I rolled. And I would get my paycheck, it would go, I'd have a sweet truck, and I just keep doing that over
Right.
and over again. And then once I actually did start making decent money at that company, I started putting it in a savings account, and I was like, all right, so things are looking up. But then I looked at my 10-year trajectory, and I was like, even if I kill it and become a regional manager, I'm only going to go from here to, like, here.
Right.
And then I was like, there's got to be a way to get to here while suffering a little bit. And then that's how I came across real estate. And
Suffering.
yeah,
I think that was an interesting
was-
choice of words.
It
It
is.
was suffering.
It is suffering.
For about a year. It's like crossing the desert with no water.
Right.
I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
because you're not
It's
going to
the
be
risk.
You're
It's
not
the
going to be
risk
bringing
versus
in
reward.
banging commissions your first 6 months looking at this
Right.
23-year-old construction worker with tattoos. It's just not going to happen. And you gotta just work yourself up. You gotta get to know the business. You gotta develop experience, and you gotta keep just hitting the pavement, making it happen.
I don't think I ever even really thought about that, whether I would ever want to work for myself.
He was a born seller.
I know. I know that I don't like having a boss.
Right.
4 years in the service of being told what to do and the dumbest I'm like, what? This is stupid. This doesn't make sense. So then I got out, and then I worked for people again, and I thought the same thing. This is stupid. What am I doing? And then all of a sudden, now I am my own boss, and I'm like, holy what was, like, this is the best thing. You couldn't pay me enough money to go back to a 9-to-5 job.
No, you can't. And I think a lot of that, and we've talked about this on the show tonight, and that is that old 9-to-5. People were teaching a way to run a business, to run a sales
Right.
environment
Right.
that was classic and old school. And I
Right.
think often, too, we try to encourage other people to live a lifestyle that we live.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, tell me if I'm wrong here. Do your parents not still emulate that 9-to-5, come home, watch TV, sit on the couch, and do it again mentality?
Absolutely.
And there's a lot
Absolutely.
of people who got stuck
do
in
that.
that. Yeah, it
And,
really.
and with our increase in communication channels, I mean, we grew up with developing social media,
Right.
Facebook. I remember when MySpace became
Oh my
a thing in the
God.
past, and then Facebook, and then we got Twitter, and we have text messages, we got smartphones, we have YouTube platforms. And as communication increased, I think so did the rest of the industries have to evolve, because back in the 70s and 80s, realtors literally had a
book.
desk phone
Yep.
and a book, and like they actually had to know the neighborhood like inside and out to know like
know the
what
market.
houses were
Yeah.
for sale.
Right.
And
There was no
or else they
way.
couldn't find them. It's not like there was a TomTom GPS in their freaking 75 Chevy. so it was such a different landscape.
You know what?
Tom
And it-
GPS. Hold on. When's the last time you had a Tom? I mean, come on.
I remember my dad had a
Yeah,
TomTom
I think my mom
GPS.
got me a TomTom Tom for my 16th birthday for my car.
Tom.
So Chris, you got to talk to my mom, right? She did real estate in the 80s for Remax.
Oh,
Ooh,
dude,
really?
bring her on
Yeah.
the show.
So you know.
Yeah, so
Bring her on
she
the
would.
show.
And
What did she go through? What did her day look like?
Yeah, but she would tell me stories that they would have like these call session hours where they pick up the phone book, do exactly what you just said, but also door-to-door magnets. You know, she would do like sit on site, that sort of, a lot of mailers.
Yeah.
And when I asked her, I was like, "What was that like?" She was like, "Oh, I don't know, big hair, you know, hoop earrings." Like, and I'm like,
Big hair.
But that was it, though. That's what sold.
And then also,
I was like, "What?" It didn't even matter who you were, what you did. It was kind of just like, well, the marketing worked back in those days, and
Yeah.
now you need something that stands above the
Social
marketing.
media is what it is now.
and
really.
also, as far as trading stocks, didn't you really have to be in Wall Street to be a part of Wall Street back then? Like it wasn't trading through online brokerages; it was actual paper
Oh,
trading.
yeah,
like they
yeah.
would take the 200 shares of IBM, and then they would take it up to the teller and then do that
Yeah,
thing. Like imagine
It's
that.
not quite like that anymore.
Yeah,
Right, no, that's
Right?
the whole
So-
thing, though.
so-
Technology has changed
Right.
so
Now you
many
could be,
industries. It's revolutionized so much.
a financial advisor killing it with a lot of volume in Salem, New Hampshire.
Yeah,
You don't have to
sure.
be on Wall
And
Street.
and I think, you know, while things have changed as much as they have, there's still a lot of things that are still very much the same. And
Yeah.
that's going to be people value, and they value people,
Yeah.
and they value people they can trust.
Well, I've heard
Right.
some.
That's
some
why I'm not
people
worried
be
about
like,
Redfin.
Well,
Everyone's like, oh, Redfin's
1%
gonna
listings.
change the industry with their 1%. I'm like,
No,
yeah,
they're not.
just wait till a couple of those deals turn sour.
Yeah,
It's gonna
wait,
be a whole different
exactly,
ballgame.
wait.
And they're gonna have more lawsuits than they can.
When
Wait
you
till
when you
they
need
can
help
see.
and you get stuck on a
Right.
1-800 line,
Yeah,
Right,
Yeah.
and they're gonna be like, my realtor doesn't answer their
It's
phone.
like my realtor does. It's like
5:30.
because they're making $12 an hour and they
Right.
don't give a shit about you. dude.
Right.
Same thing happens in my industry. I mean, there's a big push for reduction in cost. And they don't want us to get paid, and I think the same thing goes for real estate. They try pushing that conflict of interest down.
Yeah.
But it's all for the better. I mean, I think they really do want to always have the best interests of our clients in mind.
Well, I think pressure on the industry makes change usually for the better.
Yeah, and I'll ask the clients what type of experiences they've had with advisors in the past.
Oh, that's
and
that's a
tell
good
me some of the
idea.
horror stories, because we
Yeah.
don't want to experience that again.
Right.
Right.
And if you just address it right out from the start, honestly.
Yeah, and you can tell them what you do differently or,
Yeah.
or whatever, and just
Exactly.
kind of clear the air. So then there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Amen, brother.
That is brilliant. So we've kind of had, I think, a pretty good show as far as all of us kind of going back and forth, but I still want to dive into your aspect of things a little bit. So you started at, whatever it was, 23,
Yep.
got your own Jones office, and now you are 27. It's been 4 years. What are some of, I know we talked about some of the changes you've made, but how has your business grown, and what are some things you're doing differently now that you have been working your own thing for 4 years?
Yeah, so the business has definitely grown. We've gotten to a place now where, for the first time in my career, I get to be a little bit picky about who I'm working with,
Isn't that
right?
nice? We're in the same boat, too.
I can't say I've always been there, and I can't say I'll stay at this level forever. I might get more picky as your career goes on, and I think you have to,
Yeah.
right? I think the growth has been good. We've definitely have evolved over the years to taking on any client that we wanted, to now working with people who are either A, referred, or B, really just see and want somebody that they can trust and value. And so that's definitely changed over time, from being a transactional type of environment where I was just out there banging on doors trying to get the sale, to now just being that guy, being the person that people know. And
The guy.
yeah, and my life has changed from being less like a business and more like a lifestyle that generates business
Yeah.
at this point in time.
Yeah.
So the hustle has changed.
I feel like as the lifestyle begins to blend in with the business, the money follows suit. That's what I've seen in my industry.
Because you're being more yourself.
Yeah,
you're being
right.
more
You're just part of
authentic,
it.
and you're just
Oh my
doing your
God.
thing.
Well, dude,
I remember
I mean-
I used to never take clients out to dinner.
Oh.
I would never
You're
like
missing out, dude.
I would never like I remember my first year and a half or 2 it was just different, you didn't have the experience or the confidence level, and now I've become such good friends with almost
Right,
everybody single one,
Right.
and they know you and respect you, and you stay in touch, and it just breeds more and more business, so it helps your business and helps your social life as well, and like
Well,
it's
it is
just-
funny to
it
think
all
how
blends.
your business changes. I mean, I don't like one thing for me for sure. When I first met you, I used to be dress pants or jeans and a blazer with dress shoes
Every day.
every single
Yeah.
day.
In a blazer. I remember the blazer.
I don't even know the last time I put a blazer on. I have 3 nice blazers sitting in my closet. I should probably just throw them in the dumpster because the only time I've worn a suit since then was to Alex Bellman's gala that he invited me to, which was awesome. But aside from that, like, I don't rock blazers anymore. I find that for myself, for the most part, I just kind of just put on clothes every day and I'm just like, whatever.
I think it's become less about where you are.
I think it's important because people are going to get a feel for you, right? Like
Right.
Almost anybody that you meet is going to have an initial reaction as to what
first
type of
impression.
person, right?
Yeah,
first impression of you.
And you always want to make a good one.
Exactly, but I don't think you need to be in a suit and tie to
Right.
make a good first impression. People, when I meet people for the first time, a lot of people tell me they get right out of the gate, they kind of get like this honest, trustworthy feeling, which makes me happy because that's
all they care about.
That's what I want to
Right.
give off, and that's the type of person I am. I want to be able to be trusted. I want you to think I'm honest with you because I
Right.
am. And I tell my clients, listen, I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear.
What you need to hear.
I'm here to
Yeah.
tell you the truth and the honesty about this is what it is. This is how it's going to be. If you trust me, we're going to get shit done. If you don't, well then.
It makes business better.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it really comes down to. I mean, I think there's a connotation out there that salesmen are slimy.
Yep.
And that salesmen are not out there to help you, but to
Right.
earn a commission. And part of that is because that's how we get compensated, but it has nothing to do with really who we are
100%.
and how we do our job.
100%.
I did want to ask,
Yeah,
like,
Throw it
what
in.
are the biggest wealth building moves
sure.
someone can do in their mid-20s with a moderate income? That's
Wow. Yeah, I'm not going to give advice on that.
Yeah.
So a lot of
I see. I do.
I can't.
I don't know what I can or
do
can't
that.
ask.
Yeah,
Maybe too
so
much.
all advice comes from really breaking down the individual. Yeah, you can't give broad-based financial advice because it doesn't fit everybody.
Everybody,
It's
right.
kind of like walking into a one-size shirt store. Yeah,
Right.
it's all extra large.
So,
Can
like, some
everybody
people
fit?
may be better
You know?
off real estate investing and pouring more money into that, while others may be better off with their diversified portfolio, just pouring as much money into that.
Comes down to
as they can.
style. Comes down to style and what you understand. Honestly,
Yeah.
if you understand the real
Well,
investment world,
I don't have any
like, it's-
investments with you yet because I understand real estate investing,
Right,
and I don't.
and you're
understand
familiar
that.
with what you know.
Right.
So that just means we're going to talk
that's how
more.
we
That's all
open-
it
yeah,
is.
right.
That's how we open the show.
I sense
though.
a potential client.
Yeah,
right?
right.
He already
Yeah,
knows. He already knows.
Talk
He
to him a
already
little
knows.
bit about the power of dividends and interest.
Well, the rule of
I said this
72,
to my
man.
friend the other day.
Yeah.
I go. My goal is to really be able to borderline live off dividends and interest
That's a
by
good referral.
35.
That was me, you know.
Oh, you're probably one of them.
So this
and Chris
one-
was like, "Yeah, I gotta get into that."
Yeah. So you want to live off dividends and interest, right? So there's a basic math equation that everyone can learn. You pretty much learn it in your finance class when you're in college. Most people forget about it, but when you're at our age or you're saving money and you really want to know how much you need to return on something to get to where you want to be, right? So let's say a client walks in with $100,000 and their goal is to double their money. And kind of an arbitrary goal, but let's just say you had that in your mindset. You want to double your money. Well, we know that over 10 years, you have to return 7.2% to double your money. So if you had a 10-year goal to double something of value, that's what you have to go and get for a return to double it, compounding.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's use that as a benchmark. Now let's have that conversation about risk, right? So now you can see why making 3 choices for your financial well-being might not be the most suitable thing, but really gauging, what your goal is and then starting from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow,
Very
that
interesting.
makes a lot of sense. You blew me out of the water with that answer. I thought it would be more pointed, but
It's
I
not.
get
It's
it.
not.
He can't,
So you
though.
really have to. It really evolves around the client themselves and what they're doing.
So most people think we're stock jockeys, that we know the market
That's what
and this
to
is
be
what you
honest,
want
that's
to
what
buy.
I was thinking.
Yeah, so it's more of a hybrid now. So we're really more so behavioral finance coaches. So we help get behind how you relate to money and how you assess
Okay.
risk. So it's really kind of like a cross between a psychologist and an advisor.
I mean, I literally flat out, because I said it before, I'll say it again, financial advising or investing into stocks and that stuff, I am so like, that is not me at all.
Right.
I literally said to them on the golf course, I said, so listen, so just break it down really simple for me. How much is what you do on a day-to-day basis like Wolf of Wall Street? And he just laughs at me.
Yeah,
He's
it's none of
It's
it.
none.
None of
it's
it.
none. I'm
Right.
like, I didn't think so, but I just wanted to know because I'm like, are you Are you constantly making calls
Oh, I
to other?
am.
Well,
Yeah.
well, not like calls, but like, oh, we gotta get 5,000 shares on. Blah, 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 blah.
But sometimes you have to get a hot order like that though,
Right.
and you have to place a trade before 4 o'clock, and the stock market's moving. You got to
And
get
it's
it
busy
in.
and-
yeah.
okay.
So that whole 9 to 5 thing, yeah, for me, there are office hours technically.
Right.
But that office is going to be wherever my computer is. And
Yeah.
sometimes I could be on the road. That could be my
It's
phone.
just like a loan officer. I mean,
Exactly.
they can write loans from anywhere, which is awesome.
I can
That's
place
the
a buy
one thing
wherever I
we
got a
can't
computer.
do.
I know some
we
people
have to be
who,
local.
I
We
know
have
some
to
people
drive.
who did pretty well with that December 2018 dip.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I think just having the expectation as to where you are in a market cycle, knowing your own risk and what expectations to come down the road. As long as you have those 3 things in place, where you are, where you want to be, in your risk, you're going to be able to navigate.
There's got to be
anything.
a real hard difference between short-term and long-term
Yeah.
investing, because I know I have see, I can talk personally all I want, right? So
Yeah,
I
you
say
can.
this. So I have TD Ameritrade, which is like my main brokerage account that I actually use to manually trade.
Yep.
And then I also have another investment account that is basically just a diversified portfolio, which really goes around dividend income
Value.
as well as interest, and it's heavy in bonds. It's pretty damn safe. And for that one, I'm like, hey, I don't care at all.
Right.
You know, like.
So you're playing the bucket game, or
Yeah.
the barbell game is what I call it. So if you can imagine like a barbell, you have like the 2 heavy weights on each side and the skinny in the middle.
Yeah.
So what you have is on one side, you're aggressive. You have nothing in the center. And then on the other side, you have all your conservative. So when you pick up that barbell, it feels like an even 20 pounds. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah, yeah.
Because if you picked up that barbell and you had your bonds missing or your stocks missing, well, that's not going to work. You know,
Right,
you're going
right.
to go to one side to the other.
I'm so damn excited because my next move is I'm finally going to delve into what Chris loved the most in the beginning. I'm going to grab a multifamily and have rental income. Start seeing how I like that.
Airbnb is the future. I'm ready for Airbnb.
Because to be honest, my
Alex, Airbnb at the lake. Let's go.
I'm ready. Dude.
just
Let's
buying
do this.
Airbnbs at the lake.
Dude, my stepdad
Absolutely.
went from like 28 rental condos.
Vacation rentals
and
are
now he
lucrative.
just preaches. He goes, I don't even want tenants anymore. I don't want to deal with it. I just want to do weekly Airbnbs. There's so much more money. It's so
Time
much easier.
efficiency,
Yeah.
responsibility,
Yeah.
liability.
He's like,
the
you
whole
charge
bit.
them $100 cleaning fee. You go up there, you Windex the counters, and
also
vacuum.
people-
now you gotta
people who-
disinfect the counters.
People
Yeah.
who stay there for 3 days are
Char-
a lot less likely to have to spend the money in order to evict them and get them out.
And,
'Cause they're
Right.
leaving anyway.
Right.
and you can have cameras there, so you can like see if they're like, you know. So he runs a place.
Wait, what?
His yeah.
Cameras and Airbnbs.
Airbnb. Yeah.
Airbnb. That's weird.
I think
It's
that's
allowed. It's
that's a
allowed.
thing.
Yeah. So he
Ugh.
said. So
Wait, not all in the house though.
oh yeah, you can have more.
I thought it was just like an entrance driveway thing.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. He
We gotta look
literally,
into
my
that.
Yeah.
stepdad literally.
That sounds
No,
sketchy.
he told me the other day. He literally sent me a video, and it's like these people playing beer pong on the deck on the side of the house or whatever.
Joey's like, "What's the last Airbnb I went to?"
And it's-
thinking about it
no,
right
I'm
now.
just
He's
thinking.
like,
It's a,
It
you
was
always,
actually
you
San
always get a
Diego.
scope. You get a scope for cameras for
"Oh
sure.
man, they
Yeah.
probably weren't
He
cameras there."
he sent me the video, and the girl was like, "Oh my god, guys, there's the camera in the corner," and they're like, "Wait, let's just go change it." So she like moves a chair, goes up to the camera, and then breaks the camera off the side of the house, and the camera just falls to the ground, and it's just like upside down, filming them playing beer pong, and they're like, "Oh my god!" It's actually a really funny
my
video.
God.
It's like a bunch of college kids, and they're
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
my
Real
stepdad's like-
successful people.
My stepdad can like hey, he can talk through the camera. He can be like, hey, you need to remount the camera, and they're like, what? Oh my god.
I would
Who
not
was
feel
it?
comfortable if
he
somebody's
didn't really do that.
Airbnb was like speaking to me while I was staying
know,
in their
could you
home.
To be honest, I wouldn't be comfortable with any cameras
I think
whatsoever.
it might only be on like the exterior of the house. To
Yeah.
be honest with, he preaches by Airbnbs. He says he doesn't even want to rent condos and multifamilies anymore. But he's kind of, I'll say it out loud, an idiot because he doesn't screen his tenants, so he ends up with a bunch of heroin and crack addicts living there. And I'm like, well, dude, if
It's
you
all
get,
about finding
if you
good
get
tenants.
the good tenant, you don't have those problems.
Right.
You might still have issues, but when you're just like, yeah, I'll rent it to whoever left and right. Yeah,
See,
you're
but
gonna
those are
have
risks.
issues.
Those are risks,
Those
just
are
like
risks.
investments have risks, but you're looking at them and you understand them. Just
7
replace
others
the
in there.
word heroin addict with investment, right? So did you screen your investment? Did you screen... You see what I'm saying? So it's really... All things that come down to investments come down to risk, principal, and timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's a house, a car, anything.
That's fair. That's
You can
that's
turn
Cars
it
aren't
into
investments.
terms of
Let's
money.
make
that's
that
a good
clear,
point.
right?
That's a good point.
Liability. So, are you a believer in Robert Kiyosaki's like #1 saying, where he's like, this is an asset and this is a liability. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket each month,
Yeah.
and an asset is something that puts money in, and that's it, clean cut. Because
Yeah.
there are so many people who complain that, hey, my house that I live in is an asset. And under Robert Kiyosaki's
It's not.
It's a
signage,
cash
it's
expense,
definitely not. Yeah.
So when I'm working with a client, we'll do a full breakdown of cash flow. So we'll do assets and liabilities, income and expenses. And so when we work with the numbers, that's it, man. We're working with the numbers, right? But you
And you
ask,
just show it clear as day.
yeah, you got to
Yeah.
know where you are. Hard numbers. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just like when you say you don't want to tell them what they want to hear, but you got to tell them what they need to hear.
Right.
But you mentioned real estate as an investment, and yeah, it still can be. And I think for the right investor, it's the right investment. You know, I'm not going to tell you what's not suitable for you,
Yeah.
because only you can make that decision at the end of the
Totally.
day, too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, well, thanks for tuning in today, everybody. It's been an awesome show with my friend Joe O'Brien and, of course, my co-host Matt 101 over here. So thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like button. Leave a comment, good or bad. We don't care. Let's get that YouTube algorithm rolling. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.
And a huge thank you to Joe O'Brien. Thanks for coming on, especially this podcast that's in the very beginning stages. So we super appreciate you coming on. Hope maybe you can join us again someday.
I would love to.
Also check out these, Where am I? What camera?
Oh,
Look at those.
there we go.
We're
Real
getting
Success
pretty.
Podcast
We're
is
getting
moving
pretty
up.
official
And you're,
now. We got mic covers here, so we're taking this thing to the next level.
Well, thank you
Anyways.
guys. It was a blast. Had
Yeah,
a
hell
lot
yeah.
of fun.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. This is Real Success with Real People, and tune in every other Thursday.
And I'll see all three of you on the golf course soon.
Much
Are
love.
you
Of course.
listening? Damn. Yeah.